The last song of Signia Prime was a scream. It echoed not through the air, but through the chorus, the planet-wide psionic network of living crystal and root that bound the Sirhenes together. Ilara, a song weaver of the third spire, felt it as a physical blow. Her six-fingered hands flew to the luminescent crystal console before her own bioluminescence flickering from a healthy, pearlescent blue to a sickly, terrified green. Her skin, usually smooth as polished nacre, prickled with cold. Outside the spire's transparent, membrane-like walls, the sky was dying. It was choked with the obsidian-black geometries of the Kralian hegemony. Their ships, harvesters, were not built for elegance. They were flying foundries, bristling with plasma lances and kinetic drivers, and they were systematically cracking the floating, bioengineered cities of her people. Plumes of superheated vapor, the ghosts of vaporized rivers, rose from the planet's surface. The air smelled of ozone and incinerated chlorophyll. "Shields at 12%, a voice chimed, high and musical, yet strained to the point of breaking. It came from Kalen, Ilara's brother, his image shimmering on a console woven from living fibers. He was a shell shaper, a defensive architect, and his node was miles away at the edge of the capital, Alesha. His face, usually a calm, liquid-black expanse of empathetic eyes, was taut with despair. "The primary resonance pattern is failing. Their kinetic slugs are bypassing the harmonic. Reroute the southern nexus. Use the song of anchoring," Ilara commanded, her voice a chord of desperate authority. She poured her will into the console, her mind weaving a new pattern of defensive energy, a psionic shield made of shared belief. For a moment, the planetary shield shimmered and held. A Kralian lance struck it, and the impact sent a tremor through the very bedrock, throwing Ilara from her grower chair. She scrambled up, her slender, 2-meter-tall frame trembling. The Sirhenes were not warriors. They had no weapons, not in the true sense. Their defenses were sonic resonators designed to calm agitated fauna. Their ships were solar sails woven from spider silk, and their government was a perpetual philosophical debate. They were artists, poets, and gardeners, and they were being erased. "It's not working, Ilara." Kalen's voice was a ragged sigh. They've landed south of the arbor." Ilara's blood ran cold. The Krail, the chitinous, four-armed brutes of the dark sectors, they were known for their brutality, for consuming the cultures they conquered, turning entire species into slaves or sustenance. Their philosophy was simple: strength consumes, weakness feeds. A new scream entered the chorus, this one sharp and final. The defense node at the arbor had gone silent. The Krail were on the ground. "We have to surrender," Kalen whispered, his image flickering. "We can beg for terms." "Terms?" Ilara felt a cold, alien emotion fill her chest. Rage. "There are no terms with the Krail. They will shatter our spires, boil our seas, and wear our shells as ornaments. Is that the passage you choose?" "I choose life, little sister." Kalen slammed his fist on his own console. "Even a life in chains is better than this extinction." "No," Ilara said, her voice dropping to a low, powerful hum. She turned from the main console to a chamber at the back of the spire's core. It was dark, covered in ancient, dormant root systems. This was the reliquary. "What are you doing?" Kalen's voice was sharp with alarm. "That is forbidden, the first song protocols." "The first song protocols were for a different age," Ilara said, placing her hands on a central, pulsating crystal. It was the size of her head, and it was not connected to the chorus. It was a relic, a machine from a time when the Sirhenes were young and feared the dark. It was a deep-space, broad-spectrum transmitter, a bottle tossed into an infinite black ocean. "You don't know who will answer," Kalen pleaded. "You could call something worse, the Void Drinkers, the Ascended. You could doom us all." "We are already doomed," Ilara said softly. She closed her large, dark eyes. The Krail were melting the outer doors of the spire. She could hear the grotesque, wet sizzling sound as their plasma torches met the living bioarchitecture. The smell of her burning world was acrid in her nostrils. She took a breath, shutting out Kalen's protests, the screams of her people, the thunder of the orbital bombardment. She let all of it flow into her. The terror, the profound, heartbreaking sorrow of a billion lives ending, the beauty of her world, the shimmering crystal cities, the songs of the leviathans in the methane seas, the rustle of the glassleaf forests. She gathered it all up, the entire essence of Signia Prime, and wove it into a single, complex, multi-layered signal. It was not a request for military aid. It was not a data packet of coordinates and enemy fleet strengths. It was a plea. It was a song of a people at the absolute edge of oblivion. It was pure, distilled, agonizing despair. Ilara pushed her hands, her mind, and her soul into the ancient transmitter. She bypassed every safety, shattered every protocol, and threw her people's dying scream into the void. The crystal flared with a blinding white light. The spire groaned as it drew power from the planet's very core. A single, needle-thin beam of coherent energy lanced up, piercing the atmosphere, slicing through the chaos of the space battle, and shot out into the deep, uncaring black. It was aimed at no one. It was aimed at everyone. On her console, a single rune glowed, confirming the transmission. The signal was away, traveling faster than light, replicated through quantum entanglement, echoing in subspace. A desperate, impossible hope. Then the main doors of the chorus chamber exploded inward. A wall of chitin and metal filled the opening. A Kralian Archon, Vorlag, stood there, his armor a glistening, oily black. He was massive, easily 3 meters tall, and held a humming plasma pike. He regarded Alara with 4 glowing, insectoid eyes, a low clicking sound of amusement coming from his mandibles. "Such a pretty song," he hissed, his voice like rocks grinding together. "And so short." Alara stared at the monster, her body rigid with terror but her head held high. She had done it. The plea was sent. She only hoped, as the Archon raised his pike, that Kalen had been wrong. She hoped there was nothing worse than the Krail. Because if there was, she had just invited it to her funeral. 50,000 light-years away, in the cold, empty abyss of the Silent Rift, Lieutenant Maya Hex Coat felt the scream scrape across her mind. She was on the bridge of the TCS Enduring Vigilance, the flagship of the 10th Autonomous Fleet. The bridge was not a grand chamber of shining view screens. It was a cramped, cold, dark sphere, illuminated only by the faint blue glow of holographic data streams. The air tasted of recycled oxygen and the faint, metallic tang of pressurized coolant. Hex was strapped into the Cybermega's throne, a web of neural interface needles hovering millimeters from her augmented skull. Her job was to listen. Not just to radio, but to the quantum chatter, the subspace static, the very background radiation of the universe. And this was new. It wasn't a signal. It was a feeling, a wave of pure, concentrated, weaponized despair. It was so raw it made her teeth ache and the biomonitors on her console spike into the red. "Synaptic feedback," she gasped, her voice hoarse. "Something just hit the primary entanglement array, not a signal, a psychic shockwave, massive bandwidth." On the command deck above her, Admiral Aris Thorne turned. He was an old man built like a gnarled oak, his face a roadmap of scars and strategic burdens. His uniform was simple, functional charcoal gray, devoid of medals. The 10th Fleet didn't bother with medals. "Source, Lieutenant," he said, his voice a low gravel. "Filtering, gods." Hex winced, her fingers flying across a non-physical console. She pulled the signal out of the static, isolating the emotional payload from the carrier wave. The raw agony flooded her senses. She saw images, felt them, cities of pearl shattering, skis of fire, the screech of chitinous monsters. "It's a civilian distress call, sir. Deep Spectrum, First Song Protocol. A Hail Mary broadcast." "Origin," Thorne repeated, his eyes fixed on the main tactical holomap. "Signia Prime, unaligned territories rimward of the Kralian border." Hex's voice was tight. She forced the emotion down, becoming the cool professional. "The signal is, it's a dirge, sir, a plea for help. They're being overwritten. Genocide in progress." Commander Rylas, the ship's first officer, stepped forward. He was a younger man, sharp and pragmatic, the very model of a modern fleet officer. "Sir, Signia Prime is a pacifist species. The Sirheens, no strategic value, no resources, and its Kralian hegemony space. The Krail are the aggressors." The bridge went utterly silent. The Krail, everyone knew the Krail. "That's not a border dispute, Commander," Thorne said, his voice dangerously quiet. "That's an extermination. The Krail don't conquer pacifists, they eat them." "Admiral," Rylas pressed, "our orders are strategic deterrence. We are the Wraith Fleet. Our entire purpose is to remain a threat in the shadows, a knife to the spine of the Galactic Compact, revealing our position, our strength, our existence, for a single, non-aligned world. It compromises 2 decades of human strategic denial. It is not our fight." Thorne stared at the map. Rylas was right. The 10th Fleet was humanity's insurance policy. They were the boogeymen. They were the ones who showed up when a war was truly lost or when an existential threat emerged. They were not a rescue service. They were the weapon of last resort. "Hex," Thorne said, "play the signal." "Sir." "The audio component. The song you called it, put it on the bridge speakers." "Admiral," Rylas started, "that's emotional contamination." Do it, Lieutenant. Hex nodded. She isolated the core harmonic of the Sirhen signal. It was not a human sound. It was a complex, heartbreaking chord, a blend of a cello's mournful cry, a whale's song, and a woman's weeping. It filled the cold, dark bridge. It was the sound of a billion souls singing their own death song. It was beautiful, and it was the most horrific thing any of them had ever heard. The song played for 10 seconds. The bridge crew, hardened veterans who had seen plasma-scorched colonies and the vacuum-dead faces of their own comrades, were frozen. One ensign was openly weeping, his hands clamped over his ears. Thorne let the silence hang for a beat after the song ended. "Commander Rylas," Thorne said, his voice soft, "you are correct, it is not our fight." Rylas nodded, relief easing the tension in his shoulders. "However," Thorne continued, turning to his tactical officer, "the Kralian hegemony has just committed an act of spontaneous, broadcasted genocide. This makes them an existential threat to all non-aligned worlds in this quadrant. Under the Broken Silence Doctrine, Article 3, we are now authorized to engage." Rylas's face went pale. "Sir, that's a declaration of total war." "It is," Thorne agreed. He turned to the helm. "Navigator, plot a slipstream jump to Cygnia Prime. I want us in high orbit in 30 minutes. 30, sir, that's a red-line jump. It'll tear the stabilizers apart." "It will also get us there before the Sirheens are extinct," Thorne countered. "Hex, open a channel, fleet-wide, all ships." "Channel open, Admiral." Thorne gripped the command rail. His knuckles were white. "All ships, this is Vigilance. We are executing a Broken Silence intercept. Hostile force identified as Kralian hegemony. Fleet strength, unknown, presumed heavy. Mission, surgical decapitation, orbital supremacy, and civilian preservation. All ships, condition red. Prepare for immediate combat jump on my mark." He paused, looking at the tactical plot. "The galaxy calls us wraiths. It calls us the deadliest fleet. They tell stories about us to frighten their children. Today, we're going to show them why." He looked at Hex. "Mark." "Jump initiated," the navigator yelled. The enduring Vigilance did not accelerate. It did not gracefully enter warp. The experimental slipstream drive tore a hole in the fabric of reality. The ship, and the 40 other matte black, knife-like vessels of the 10th Fleet plunged into the screaming, non-existent tunnel of slip space. The G-forces were instant and brutal, pinning the crew into their seats, rattling the very atoms of the bulkhead. Back on Cygnia Prime, in the ruins of the spire, Archon Vorlag laughed as he brought his plasma pike down toward Alara's neck. She closed her eyes, her last thought a desperate, fadding question. Did anyone hear? The pike never landed. The world screamed. It was not the song of the Sirheens. It was a sound of physics being violated. Above the planet, space itself ripped open. A jagged, angry scar of raw energy appeared where only vacuum had been. Vorlag froze, his insectoid head snapping back, his mandibles clicking in confusion. What? A moment later, the sky filled with monsters. They were not the brutalist factories of the Krail. They were something else, shards of pure, predatory night. They were angular, matte black, and seemed to drink the light of the burning atmosphere. They were ghosts. They were knives. They were impossibilities. And they were all, unmistakably, pointing directly at the Kralian fleet. The 10th Autonomous Fleet had arrived. The bridge of the Kralian flagship, the Maw, descended into chaos. Archon Vorlag's amusement evaporated, replaced by a cold, unfamiliar spike of confusion. His sensory appendages quivered, tasting the strange radiation bleed from the newcomers. "Report," he bellowed, his voice a percussive crackle. "Unknown contacts, Archon," his tactical officer shrieked, its forearms a blur across the control surface. "Massive energy signatures, they tore space. No FTL entry vector, they just appeared." "Identify them?" Vorlag snarled, stalking toward the main view screen. The 40 new ships hung in high orbit, perfectly still, perfectly silent. They were smaller than his harvesters, but their design was wrong. It was predatory, all sharp angles and weapon ports, lacking any sign of habitation or non-military function. They were engines with guns, wrapped in armor that seemed to bend light around it. "No transponders, Archon, no identification, they are not broadcasting anything." The officer's voice was laced with dawning terror. "They're running completely dark." "Then they are cowards," Vorlag spat, his bravado returning. "Target them, all harvesters, realign orbital lances, erase these fools from my sky." On the ground in the shattered spire, Ilara had fallen to the floor, her ears, or the Sirhen equivalent, ringing from the psychic shock of the fleet's arrival. It was a polar opposite to her own people's presence. Where the Sirhens were a warm, resonant song, these new arrivals were a cold, sucking silence. A void. Kaelin's voice crackled over her personal comlink, which had survived the blast. Ilara, Ilara, what was that? The bombardment. It stopped. Ilara crawled to the shattered opening of the spire. Vorlag, the Kralian Archon, had forgotten her. He was staring transfixed at the sky, his pike lowered. Ilara followed his gaze. She saw the new ships. Her heart, which had briefly flared with impossible hope, sank into a new, deeper pit of dread. These were not rescuers, they were executioners. They were the worst Kaelin had warned her about. They were sleek, cold, and utterly terrifying. They looked like weapons forged from a dead star. Kaelin, she whispered, her voice trembling. I think I've made a terrible mistake. We have called the void itself. On the bridge of the enduring vigilance, the world was a calm, blue-lit sphere of tactical data. The Kralian fleet was laid bare, 3 Harvester-class capital ships, a dozen cruiser-weight escorts, and swarms of lighter craft. They're retargeting, sir, Hex reported, her voice flat, all emotion bled away. The Harvesters are charging their main lances. Predictable, Admiral Thorne said. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. Hex, you have the choir. Yes, sir. Hex's fingers danced, but the real work was happening in her mind. She wasn't just a comms officer. She was a cyber warfare artist. The Kralian hegemony operated on a rigid collective command network. They were a hive, and Hex was about to become its new queen. Initiating null wave, she murmured, targeting their command and control protocols. A silent, invisible pulse of pure data shot from the vigilance. It wasn't a jamming signal. It was a logic bomb dressed up as a Kralian command authentication. On the Maw, Vorlag's tactical officer screamed as its console went dead, flashing a single incomprehensible rune, a stylized human skull. Archon, I've lost the fleet. All ships are reporting. Offline, their networks are. They're not just jammed, they're gone. What? Vorlag roared, turning from the window. Before they even fired a shot, Commander Ryla's breathed, his pragmatism giving way to awe. Gods. That bought us 6 seconds, Thorne said, his eyes on the timer. Tactical Fire Reaper swarm, all ships, full release. The 40 human ships blossomed. From hidden ports, thousands, tens of thousands of small, drone-like projectiles were launched. They were not missiles. They were autonomous, Reaper drones, kinetic kill vehicles guided by a central VI. They formed a glittering, deadly cloud that accelerated toward the Kralian fleet with suicidal velocity. Simultaneously, Thorne continued, fire gravity lances, target the Harvester engines, cut their legs out from under them. The human cruisers and destroyers finally, terribly, spoke. They did not fire lasers. They did not launch torpedoes. From the prow of each ship, a beam of pure, shimmering distortion lanced out. It wasn't light. It was gravity, focused and weaponized. The effect was instantaneous. The Kralian cruisers, caught flat-footed, their command network shattered, their point defense guns silent, were hit. Their shields didn't ripple, they cracked like glass. The gravity beams striking their massive engines did not cause an explosion. They caused an implosion. One moment, a Kralian Harvester was a 2-kilometer-long mountain of metal. The next, its entire rear third simply folded in on itself, crushed into a hyperdense ball of scrap by its own, suddenly uncontrolled internal gravity. The reactor went critical, and the ship blossomed into a silent, expanding flower of plasma. The Reaper swarm hit the smaller escorts. The drones, moving at fractions of light speed, didn't even need warheads. They were hypervelocity tungsten rods that punched through Kralian armor as if it were paper, shredding hulls, weapons, and life support. In the sky of Signia Prime, the stars began to fall. But they were not stars. They were the burning remains of the Kralian fleet. It was not a battle. It was a deletion. A systematic, brutally efficient erasure. In less than 90 seconds, the entire orbital defense fleet of the Kralian hegemony was reduced to a cloud of expanding debris and radioactive vapor. Only one ship remained, the Maw, Vorlag's flagship. Its lance had fired wildly as its systems died, scoring a glancing blow on a human destroyer, the TCS Agincourt, which was now venting atmosphere but holding its position. Aboard the Maw, alarms shrieked. Vorlag was thrown against a bulkhead, his chitin cracked. He staggered to his view screen, his 4 eyes wide with disbelief. His fleet, his armada, it was gone. Who are you? He roared at the silent black ships. On the Vigilance, the bridge was still calm. Admiral, Hex reported, the flagship is damaged but functional. Their ground troops are still active. Vorlag is still alive. He's not the mission, Thorne said. The Sirheens are, he'll keep. He turned to Rylas. Commander, deploy the Marines. I want Torch's company on the ground now. Secure the capital's spire. Find the source of that signal. This is a rescue, not an occupation. Aye, Admiral, Rylas said, his voice hard. Firing the nails now. Ilara, still huddled in the ruins, watched the silent, terrible firestorm in her sky. The Krail were dead. Her world was saved. Then new stars appeared, bright, burning points of light detaching from the dark ships, but they were not falling, they were diving. They were heading straight for the planet, straight for her. Her personal comlink, which she thought was only connected to Kalen, suddenly crackled with a burst of harsh, digital static. It was not the musical chime of the Sirhen network. It was a brutal, efficient noise. A new language flooded her translator. It was guttural, full of hard consonants and clipped vowels. And beneath it, a voice. Cold, professional, and utterly devoid of emotion. SOS acknowledged Signia Prime. This is human fleet vigilance. A pause as the meteors screamed through the atmosphere. We are assuming tactical control of this world. Stand by for ground insertion. Help is on the way. Ilara stared at the glowing text. Human. The word meant nothing to her. It was an alien sound, a name for an alien concept. She looked at the Krail Archon, Vorlag, who was now scrambling to rally his own terrified troops on the ground, his hubris shattered. He looked for the first time afraid. Ilara looked back at the sky, at the incoming help. She had prayed for anyone to answer her call, and the galaxy's deadliest fleet, a species she had never even known existed, had responded. She didn't know whether to weep for joy or for a new, deeper terror. The ground insertion was not a landing, it was an impact. The objects Ilara had seen were kinetic entry pods, nicknamed nails by the fleet. They were single-use, tungstenal, coffins designed to punch through a planetary atmosphere at Mach 20, bypassing the need for vulnerable dropships. They hit the Grand Plaza outside the spire with the force of small earthquakes, the superheated metal of their hulls groaning as they deployed explosive bolts and braking thrusters at the last possible second. Archon Vorlag, who had been trying to rally his ground troops for a final, spiteful purge of the spire, was thrown from his feet. His Krailian reavers, fast, skittering, four-armed warriors, hissed and scattered, their plasma rifles trained on the smoking, newly arrived monoliths. Hold the line, Vorlag roared, tasting ash. Kill these new. The front plate of the nearest pod blew off. Steam and hydraulic fluid hissed into the air. From the dark interior, a new kind of monster emerged. It was not a sleek, chitinous killer like the Krail. This was a golem of dark gray metal, massive and brutalist. It stood easily 3 meters tall, its armor plated and scarred, its helmet a single, impassive red visor. It moved with a ponderous, mechanical weight, and in its hands, it held a weapon that looked more like a portable cannon than a rifle. Avoid Marine. Contacts hostile, the Marine's voice boomed, synthesized and metallic. Torch 1, we are weapons free. Clear the perimeter. 5 more pods opened. 6 of the metal giants fanned out, forming a disciplined circle. The Krail Reavers, driven by a frenzy of collective rage, charged. Plasma bolts, designed to melt through bioarmor, spat across the plaza. They impacted the Marines' armor with sizzling thwacks. The Marines didn't flinch. The energy dissipated across their kinetic dampening fields. Targets acquired, one Marine said calmly. A Krailian warrior, a 4-armed brute with plasma claws, leaped onto the lead Marine's back. The Marine didn't even turn. It simply reached back, grabbed the Krail by the head with one massive, gauntleted hand and crushed its skull. The sound of splintering chitin was sickening. The lead Marine, Torch 1, raised her heavy cannon, a breaker auto shotgun. The sound it made was not a crack or a pew. It was a deafening, chest-thumping boom that echoed off the crystal architecture. It fired a fist-sized, explosive flak shell that detonated on impact, turning the first rank of Kramlul warriors into a fine, green-blooded mist. It was a slaughter. The Krail were fast, numerous, and fought with animalistic fury. The humans were slow, methodical, and fought like industrial machinery. They were walking tanks, and their disciplined, overlapping fields of fire cut the Kralian charge to ribbons in seconds. Inside the spire, Alara watched, her hands over her mouth. Kalen had made his way to her, his own robes torn, his skin pale. By the first song, he breathed, his artist's soul recoiling. They are unmaking them. Vorlag, seeing his elite guard annihilated, finally knew true fear. He grabbed his plasma pike and scrambled back, disappearing into the ruined streets of the city, his troops breaking and fleeing with him. The plaza fell silent, save for the hum of the Marine's power armor and the drip of Kralian hemolymph. The lead Marine, Torch One, stalked toward the spire. Alara and Kalen pressed themselves back into the shadows. The golem was coming for them. It stopped in the shattered doorway, its red visor seeming to bore into them. Alara could feel the heat radiating from its armor, the smell of cordite and hot metal. Then a sound, a hiss of decompression. The Marine's helmet retracted, folding back with mechanical precision. Alara gasped. Inside the monstrous suit of armor was not a demon. It was a creature, small, soft, and pale. Its face was covered in sweat and grime, a jagged scar running down one cheek. It had forward-facing eyes, a small nose, and a thin mouth pulled into a grimace of exertion. She looked impossibly fragile, like a Sirhen infant, yet she commanded the metal body with absolute authority. "You the one who sent the e-call?" the woman asked. Her voice, unfiltered, was rough, tired, and carried an accent Alara's translator struggled with. Alara could only nod, her large black eyes wide. "Right," the woman offered a gloved but unarmored hand. "Sergeant Kiera, Torch, Rostova, Human Marine Corps, we're the cavalry." She looked around the ruined spire. "Gotta say, you've got a real pest problem here. We're here to clean up." Kalen stepped forward, his bioluminescence flashing in agitation. You killed them. With no song, no parley, you just ended them." Torch gave him a hard look. "They were trying to end you. That's how this works, pal. You shoot at us, we shoot back, harder." She tapped her comms. "Torch One to Vigilance. We have secured the package. Civilian anchor Alara is confirmed. Spire is clear, but the city is crawling. That Archon bug is still in the wind." Admiral Thorne's voice crackled in her ear. "Copy, Torch. The Krail are tough. They're adapting, going to ground in your bioarchitecture. We can't glass them without hitting you and the civies. This just became a ground war." "Understood, Admiral," Torch said, her face grim. "We'll dig in." "Negative, Sergeant," Thorne replied. "We're not here to dig in. We're here to finish this. The Krail are a collective. Cut off the head, the body dies, but Vorlag is shielded. We can't hit him from orbit, and you can't blast your way to him." "So what's the play, sir?" Torch asked, reloading her breaker with a heavy thunk clack. "We're sending in a specialist. The Krail fight as a song of their own. It's time we introduce them to a new composer. Stand by, Torch. Hex is inbound." Torch's eyes widened almost imperceptibly. "Hex, sir, is that? Wise." "It's necessary. Keep the civilians safe. Hex will handle the rest." Kalen, who had been listening, turned to Alara. His face was a mask of cold horror. He had seen the humans' efficiency. He had seen their total, remorseless application of force. And now they were sending a specialist. "Alara," he whispered, grabbing her arm, "these humans, they are not saviors. They are a plague. They are a better class of monster. They have replaced one fire with another." "They saved us, Kalen," Alara protested. "They saved us to own us, can't you see?" His voice was rising, bordering on hysteria. "They've taken tactical control. They're using weapons that defy the gods. They are a warrior species, Alara, more so than the Krail. The Krail are just hungry. These humans, they are angry." He backed away from her toward the humming, damaged core of the spire. "We cannot allow this. We cannot trade one master for another." "Kalen, what are you doing?" Alara's blood ran cold. "The first song protocols. They don't just broadcast. They can also cleanse." He was looking at the spire's self-destruct mechanism, a final protocol failsafe that would overload the entire chorus network, vaporizing the city and everyone in it. "Kalen, no!" Alara lunged for him. "It is a purer death, little sister," he cried, his hands flying to the console. "To die by our own song, not by the screech of monsters." Before Alara could stop him, Sergeant Torch moved. She was out of her armor, having shucked the main plates in a microsecond, leaving her in a light envirosuit. She was impossibly fast for such a soft creature. She crossed the room in 2 bounds and leveled a small sidearm at Kalen's head. "Don't touch that Dial, Torch hissed, all pretense of friendliness gone. We are not the Krail, we are not your masters, we are just the bastards angry enough to show up. You called, we came, now let us finish the goddamn job. Kalen froze, staring at the small, black weapon. He looked at Torch's eyes, not black and empathetic like his own, but a cold, pale blue like glacial ice. They were the eyes of a predator, but they were also tired. As they stood in a standoff, a new sound cut through the air. Not the roar of a breaker or the shriek of plasma. It was the whisper-quiet hum of a high-atmosphere shuttle. Torch glanced out the shattered window. A single, sleek Black Ops craft, looking more like a stiletto than a shuttle, was descending, landing silently in the plaza amid the discarded Krail weapons. The ramp lowered. A single figure walked out. It was not a soldier. This person wore no armor, just a simple black envirosuit. It was another small, pale creature, a woman with dark hair pulled back in a severe bun. She was carrying only a small, silver console. This was Lieutenant Maya Heck's coat. She walked past the smoking ruins of the Krail bodies, her eyes scanning the alien architecture, and headed straight for the front lines, where Vorlag was attempting to rally his forces for a counterattack. Admiral Hex radioed, her voice calm as a frozen lake. I am on site. The Krail collective song is aggressive, chaotic. Permission to sing, sir. Thorne's voice replied, grave and final. Permission granted, Lieutenant. Sing them to sleep. The plaza had become a battlefield. Archon Vorlag, driven by a combination of terror and pure spite, had rallied his remaining ground forces. He had lost his fleet, but he still had 2,000 hardened Krail warriors on the ground, and he would use them to tear this city and its newfound protectors apart. They are soft, Vorlag's voice hissed over his troops' private command net. They bleed, they hide in metal shells, show them the fury of the hegemony, bring me the head of their female leader. Krailian behemoths, massive, four-legged creatures that were half-living tank, half-siege beast, smashed through the crystal archways, their shoulder-mounted plasma cannons firing indiscriminately. Reaver infantry swarmed behind them, using the alien architecture for cover. Sergeant Torch and her 5 Marines were holding a chokepoint at the base of the spire. Contact heavy, Torch yelled, her helmet back on. Her breaker shotgun roared, turning a charging Reaver into paste. Shields at 40%, where's my support? This is the support, Sergeant. Hex's voice cut over the tactical net. Torch risked a glance. Lieutenant Coat, Hex, was walking calmly into the middle of the plaza, unarmed save for the silver console she held. Lieutenant, get back here. That's not a negotiation table, Torch roared. Understood, Sergeant. I'm not here to talk. A Krail sniper team on a rooftop spotted the soft target. They opened fire. A volley of superheated plasma lanced toward Hex. The air around her shimmered. The bolt struck a personal kinetic deflection field, harmlessly scattering. The Krail stared, clicking in confusion. Hex stopped in the center of the plaza, a picture of impossible calm amid the chaos. She looked at the advancing Krail army. She raised her console. Tuning to the Krailian collective frequency, she murmured, her eyes half closed. They sing of hunger, obedience, and rage. It's primitive, single-layered. Let's add some complexity. Alara and Kalen watched from the shattered spire. What is she doing? Kalen whispered, his self-destruct plan forgotten. I don't know, Alara replied. It's like she's listening. Hex activated her console. It wasn't a weapon, it was an instrument. It released a pulse, not of energy, not of sound, but of pure weaponized logic. The Krailian hegemony was a hive mind, their collective consciousness bound by a series of inflexible, pheromonal, and subsonic songs. They were strong because they were united. They were united because they never questioned. Hex's signal, a mimetic virus, gave them the one thing their species had evolved to suppress: individuality. It didn't broadcast fear. It broadcast a simple, recursive query translated perfectly into their command song. Query, why are we here? The collective responded, to conquer, to consume, for the hegemony. Hex's virus responded, query, where is the hegemony fleet? The collective responded, destroyed. Hex's virus pressed, query, who destroyed the fleet? The collective responded, the new enemy, the humans. Hex's virus delivered the payload, analysis. The humans destroyed the fleet in 90 seconds. We are ground troops. We cannot win. Our song is broken. Our Archon has failed. Query, why do we obey a failure? Query, why do we die for a broken song? The effect was instantaneous and catastrophic. A Kralian behemoth, its cannons charging to fire on Torch's position, suddenly stopped. It let out a low, confused whine. The Reavers advancing behind it stumbled, their movements becoming jerky and uncoordinated. They clutched their heads, their mandibles clicking in distress. Their pack mind, the thing that gave them courage and purpose, had just been shattered. They stopped being a part of the hegemony. They became, for the first time in their lives, me. And me was terrified. Me was on a burning alien world. Me was surrounded by metal golems who killed with thunder. Me saw its fleet burning in the sky. The Kralian advance didn't just stop, it collapsed. The warriors shrieked, a new sound of individual terror, dropping their weapons, turning on each other, or simply curling into fetal positions, their minds broken by the sudden, crushing weight of self-awareness. Aboard the Maw, Vorlag watched his ground army dissolve into a panicked mob. He was shielded from the mimetic attack by his flagship's hull, but he saw the effect. "COWRDS, filth," he roared, slamming his 4 fists onto his console. "I will burn this world myself. If I cannot have it, no one will." His ship was crippled, but its primary weapon, the Planet Cracker spinal-mounted kinetic cannon, was still functional. It was a weapon of last resort, designed to shatter tectonic plates. It required the ship's entire reactor output. "Charge the main cannon," he shrieked at his cowering engineer. "Target the spire, fire, fire." On the enduring vigilance, Thorne's tactical officer called out, "Admiral, the Maw is diverting all power, massive energy spike. He's charging the Planet Cracker. He's going to fire at the spire." Thorne hadn't moved, his eyes were cold. And there it is, the last spiteful act of a tyrant. "Sir, we can't stop the slug, it's too fast," Rylas said, his voice tight. "We aren't stopping the slug," Thorne said. "We're stopping the ship, Mr. Rylas. I've been holding our ace." He took the bait. Thorne pointed at the main screen. "Fire the lance, target the Maw." The enduring vigilance was more than just a carrier and a drone ship. It was a prototype. Its entire central spine was a single, terrifying weapon. A forward port opened, not with a gun, but with a series of massive focusing lenses. A beam of pure, white, silent energy shot across the void. It wasn't gravity like the smaller beams. It was a focused, temporal distortion beam. It did not hit the Maw. It hit the empty space directly in front of the Maw's cannon. Just as Vorlag screamed, "Fire!" the Planet Cracker cannon fired its colossal kinetic shell. The shell, traveling at a measurable percentage of light speed, hit the microsecond of distorted spacetime created by the human beam. The laws of physics took over. The shell's own infinite mass-at-lightspeed transition was reflected back into its own cannon. The enduring vigilance had, in effect, forced the Kralian ship to shoot itself. The result was not an explosion, it was a negation. The Maw did not blow apart. It vanished. The temporal feedback loop caused its reactor to go critical in a nanosecond, simultaneously consuming the entire ship in a flash of white-hot, silent energy that, for a single moment, looked like a brand-new star in Cygnia's sky. Then it was gone. Silence. On the ground, the Krail, now leaderless and broken, threw down their weapons and hissed in submission. Torch and her squad lowered their weapons, the steam rising from the hot barrels. "Well, hell," Torch muttered. "Lieutenant, you've got a hell of a singing voice." Hex deactivated her console, her face pale, a trickle of blood running from her nose from the sheer mental strain. She swayed but kept her feet. She walked over to the spire, where Alara and Kalen stood in the entrance, trembling. Alara's bioluminescence was a bright, pulsing display of confusion, terror, and a new, fragile emotion: gratitude. She looked at this small, soft human who had just defeated an army without firing a shot. She looked at the human who had broken the Kralian song with one of her own. What are you?" Alara finally sang, her voice a trembling chord. Hex offered a faint, exhausted smile. "We're human. My name is Maya. We heard you call." Kalen stared at the field of neutralized, weeping Krail. He looked at the empty space in the sky where the enemy flagship had been. He looked at Hex, and then at Torch's squad, who were now switching to non-lethal, stun, rounds, methodically subduing the Krail for capture. They hadn't just killed, they had stopped the enemy. They hadn't just conquered, they had liberated. Kalen's monster theory was shattered, or perhaps it had just become infinitely more complex. A week later, the sky above Cygnia Prime was clean. The brutal, factory-like debris of the Kralian fleet had been meticulously harvested by human salvager drones, which moved with the silent, spider-like efficiency of their creators. The planet's atmosphere, no longer choked with plasma fire and orbital exhaust, was returning to its pearlescent, methane-hazed beauty. The scars on the land remained, great, smoking craters and glassed plains, but the planet itself was impossibly alive. Alara and Kalen stood in the main hangar bay of the TCS, enduring vigilance. The cavernous, utilitarian space was a shock to their senses. It was cold, smelled of ozone, lubricating oil, and an undefinable metallic tang. It was the absolute antithesis of their warm, living, bioarchitectural world. Marines in simple, gray fatigues moved with purpose, servicing nail pods and stacking containment units holding the captured Krail, who were being kept in a state of induced, dreamless sleep. They were waiting for the Admiral. Admiral Aris Thorn emerged from a pressurized doorway. He was not in his formal uniform, but in the same simple, charcoal-gray fatigues as his crew. He looked, Alara thought, like an ancient, weathered stone. Songweaver Alara, Shell-Shaper Kalen, Thorn greeted them, his voice a low gravel. My fleet's apothecaries confirm your planet's biosphere is stabilizing. You will recover. Kalen, who had barely spoken in a week, stepped forward. His bioluminescence was a steady, contemplative blue. Why? He sang, his voice resonating in the metallic room. That is the only word we have left. Why? Thorn turned to a massive holographic star chart that dominated one wall. It glowed with thousands of points of light. You are here, he said, pointing to a small blue dot. Cygnia Prime. He then gestured to a large, angry red stain on the map. The Kralian hegemony. In the last 50 standard years, they have conquered and erased 12 sentient species in this sector. The Lormiri, the Andach, the people of the Xylos wastes, species you have never heard of and now never will. They were slow or weak or, like you, just peaceful. Thorn turned, his dark, weary eyes fixing on Kalen. We practice what we call preventative diplomacy. We are a deterrent, but we do not move without cause. We do not interfere in galactic squabbles. And we were cause? Alara asked softly. Your song was, Thorn said. It wasn't just a distress call, Songweaver, it was proof of art, of culture, of a unique, complex sentience on the verge of being extinguished. Genocide is an offense to the very concept of existence, and we as a species find it distasteful. The galaxy calls you wraiths, Alara whispered, the void stalkers, the deadliest fleet. They say you are myths, we thought. We thought you were the monsters Kalen warned of. A rare, thin smile touched Thorn's lips. It was a cold, sad thing. Oh, we are Sirhen, make no mistake, we are monsters. This galaxy is a dark, cold, terrifying place full of teeth. He stepped closer, his voice dropping. We are the monsters that hunt other monsters. We are the teeth that bite back on behalf of those who have none. We are the wraiths, because we have paid the price in our own souls to become the thing the darkness fears. He looked from Alara to Kalen, his gaze unwavering. We are human, and we have decided that the song of your people is worth preserving. Kalen processed this. Then you leave, you have saved us. What is your price? We have no metals, no advanced technology to offer. We didn't save you for free, Thorn said. Kalen tensed. We don't want your planet. We don't want your resources, Thorn continued, turning to the hangar bay door where Lieutenant Heck's coat now stood. We want your voice. Heck stepped forward, holding a small data crystal. Your song, Alara, the one you broadcast, it was the most powerful, complex piece of emotional data I have ever encountered. Our technology is cold, efficient. Yours is alive. We have a proposition, Thorn said, taking over. An alliance. The Kralian hegemony is broken, but it is not dead. We are. Detouring to their homeworld to deliver their captured armies and a strongly worded diplomatic message. But the galaxy is large. We cannot be everywhere. He offered the data crystal to Alara. We want you to teach us. We want you to help us weave your song into a new galactic network, not as a plea for help, but as a warning, a beacon. A new first song for all independent worlds to say, we are here, we are alive. Alara looked at the crystal. She understood. The humans were the shield, the shell-shapers. They needed the Sirheens to be the voice, the song weavers. They were offering not subjugation, but a partnership, a symbiosis, the shadow and the light working as one. Alara took the crystal, her slender, pearlescent fingers closing around it. We will, she sang, her voice clear and strong for the first time in a week. We will sing a song of humanity. Kalen bowed his head. We will sing a song of our terrible, beautiful friends. Later, from the rebuilt spire, Ilara and Kalen watched the 10th Fleet assemble in orbit. The black, knife-like ships were preparing to depart, their mission here complete. On the bridge of the Vigilance, Hex listened as a new signal came from the planet. It was not a plea. It was a new song. It was complex, layered with gratitude, sorrow for the lost, and a steely, newfound resolve. She translated it for the Admiral. "It's thank you," Hex murmured, her own eyes surprisingly wet. "Thank you for being the shadow, so we may one day return to the light." Thorn nodded once, his face set. He looked at the pearl-like planet on his view screen, a single, protected point of light in an ocean of black. "Navigator," he ordered, his voice resonating with the cold authority of his purpose. "Set a course for the Kralian homeworld, maximum burn." The enduring Vigilance turned its obsidian prow away from the world it had saved, and pointed it toward the darkness. As the slipstream engines began to tear reality open, Admiral Thorn allowed himself a final thought, a justification that was as much a prayer as it was a doctrine. They sent an SOS to anyone, and in this universe anyone has to be us, because if not us, who? The fleet vanished, leaving Signia Prime to heal and to begin its new song.